A happy new day to you, and it's good to have you join us on the table to discuss pertinent and pressing issues in our country. My name is Rebekah Awuah, and we know this week has been inundated with a lot of issues. Amongst them is the demolition exercises on the Amasaman stretch. We also had hikes in the prices of mineral water due to rising cost of production, and Parliament's also ruling on the fate of the MP for Dome Kwabenya over her absenteeism, and a section of the majority in Parliament calling on the president to show the finance minister the exit. On top of that, and on top of it all, prices of fuel, transport, and general commodities, both essential and non-essential, keep shooting up amid an unrestrained depreciation of the Ghana cedi. In the next hour, the Reporters Roundtable will critically examine Ghana's situation and its attendant effects on the masses. And in studio to help us do this is Joseph Kobla-Womeko. Joseph is a freelance journalist and also a developmental journalist. Thank you for coming. We will be joined via Zoom by Professor Akloyo. Professor Akloyo is with the Finance Department of the University of Ghana Business School, and he is also with Tesla. Hello, Prof.
Yes, hello, good morning, Rebecca.
Yes, good to have you. Let us know the picture. What exactly is happening in our country?
Okay, so good morning to your viewers. And yes, like you said, I'm an associate professor in finance at the business school, and also the chair of the research committee of Tesla Capital. Okay, so there are a number of things that are happening in the economy right now, contributing to what we are seeing. Okay, so there are both domestic and international factors. So in terms of the domestic factors, for some time now, we have been seeing an increase in our debt level. Okay, and depending on who you talk to, they estimate the level of debt between 80% of GDP to about 100% of GDP. Again, in 2020 and 2021, the fiscal deficit was 11.4% of GDP and 9% of GDP respectively. Okay, so apart from the increasing debt levels, which were
we can hear you. Please go ahead. Apart from the increasing debt level, what else are the factors that are accounting for this?
So you have domestic investors converting their cedis into dollar investments. Okay, and basically that's due to panic. People are panicking, not knowing what is happening to the economy, and consequently, people are changing their their cedis into dollars. Again, some people may argue that traders are taking advantage of the current situation and are unfairly increasing their prices. So these are some of the domestic factors. In terms of the international factors, like we know, the Russian-Ukraine war was a contributory factor. The COVID-19 pandemic constrained global supply chains, leading to increases in shipping prices, etc. Now, because of the increasing debt level and the inability of the government to increase its revenues, what we saw was that investors were concerned about our debt level. And consequently, we were downgraded by the international rating agencies like Fitch, Standard & Poor's, Moody's. And once that downgrade happened, international investors who had invested in Ghana started withdrawing their money to, let me say, the US, UK, etc. So that phenomenon is known as capital flow reversals. Okay, so they brought their money to Ghana to invest, and they are now taking the money back. And when they are going back, they won't take cedis, they will need dollars, so that will put pressure on the cedi. Again, one of the big reasons is that in previous years, the government has been able to raise money from the international capital markets by issuing what we call Eurobonds. Okay, but due to the downgrade, we have not been able to access the international capital markets. And therefore, the money that would have come in to support the economy hasn't come. And that is why we are now relying on the intervention from the IMF to increase our foreign currency reserves.
So,
So those are the main
yeah. So with these, will I say internal coupled with external factors, would we say that is exactly what is causing the astronomical rise in prices of goods and services? Because I've heard some economists and finance experts allude that to mismanagement in our country. Is that also the case?
Well, so of course, not every country has suffered to the same extent as we have, even though we have all experienced international shocks. Okay, so to a certain extent, the management of the domestic economy is a contributory factor. But the factors I mentioned previously have all contributed to the depreciation of the cedi. And because the cedi is depreciating, for example, you will see that it is affecting prices in the domestic economy, what we call imported inflation. Okay, and if you listen to what is happening now, GPRTU is increasing its transportation prices by 19%. And if transportation prices increases, it feeds into everything in the economy. Okay, so for example, I was speaking to a friend recently. He operates a restaurant. He said he used to buy the Akufo gallon of oil for 550 cedis. Now it's over 1,000 cedis. Okay, so the depreciation of the cedi is contributing to what we call imported inflation.
Right, but aside all these expert knowledge that you're giving us, when it comes to the ordinary person on the street or one who deals, who buys and sells, especially those who sell, would you not say that people are hoarding goods and creating panic in the system?
Well, you see, they are also rational economic agents, and they are reacting to the economic situation. To a certain extent, they are also trying to protect their capital. Okay, so for example, if you were importing goods, you needed $100,000. At the beginning of the year, that would be 600,000 cedis. Okay, but now it's in excess of, let me say, 1.3 million Ghana cedis. Okay, so to a certain extent, these traders are also trying to be rational economic agents, trying to protect their capital, trying to protect their profits, trying to protect their livelihoods. Okay, so you cannot entirely blame them. Of course, they may be taking undue advantage of the situation, but like I said, they're also trying to survive.
Survival against the general picture within our economic space. But how can this be arrested so that it can ease the burden on all of us within the short, the medium, or the long term?
Okay, so in terms of what can be done, there are a number of things that we think should be done. There's an article that I've written with two of my colleagues, Professor Addo Texan from the Department of Economics and Dr. Ejepoma Jekedako from the Finance Department. So she's an economist, but she's in the Finance Department. So in the short term, what we think the government can do and what the monetary authorities can do is to communicate a bit more and explain what is happening. Because a few people have called me, they really don't understand what is going on. They are panicking. People are asking me, should I change my cedis into dollars? Okay, so if we are able to provide some clarity as to what is happening, then that can break the speculative spell. Okay, a lot of people are buying dollars that they do not need now. A lot of people are buying goods and services that they do not need now. That contributes to the depreciation of the cedi, and that contributes to an increase in prices now, what we call the self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, so we need to communicate clearly to the general public. Number two is that I think that apart from the money we've received from the Afri-Exim Bank and the cocoa syndicated loans that we are informed has come into the economy now, okay, I think that we need to engage under bilateral agencies and even friendly countries. Okay, if there are African countries or other countries who can support us, I think that will go to a long extent to reduce the economic pressures. In particular, we are thinking that if we're able to shore our reserves by about $10 billion, that would significantly reduce the pressure on the cedi. So let me give you an example. For example, if you take Egypt, okay, Egypt just this week has received $3 billion from the IMF. But in addition to that support, they have also received money from other Arab countries, okay, because these Arab countries do not want to see Egypt collapse. Okay, so I'm sure we can also access some money from friendly countries who can support us. In the medium to long term, like you've asked, I think that we need to examine how we borrow, in particular the public debt management strategy. Okay, for some time now, we've increased our appetite for borrowing in the international capital markets. And this debt is not denominated in cedis, it's in dollars. And as you are aware, we don't print dollars in Ghana. Okay, so that puts pressure on us to repay our debt. That phenomenon is called original sin in economics. Okay, so we have committed original sin, we borrowed too much in dollars, and we are struggling to repay. So what we think is that in terms of public debt management, even if we are going to borrow internationally, we shouldn't borrow more than 35%. Okay, or the total debt should not be in foreign currency, because that puts a lot of pressure on us.
All right, and again, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you had a follow-up.
No, question. Please go ahead. I had a follow-up, but I will bring in that interjection once you are done with the submission.
Okay, sure. So we have rigidities in our public expenditure. Okay, there are, for example, some institutions can be weaned off the public sector wage bill. That significantly will reduce the pressure on the government. We know, I think since I was born, I've been hearing ghost names on the public payroll. That is still a challenge, so that's something that we should address. Again, we know that procurement in Ghana is a problem and is used to examine the Procurement Act to ensure that we get value for money and to ensure that no loopholes that people also need to reduce the size of the government. Okay, Ghana is.
Okay, I guess we'll come back to Professor Elikplim Akloyo on more of the issues pertaining to this whole situation that we are faced with. Okay, so we have him, or Professor. Hello,
yes,
Professor.
I'm here.
Yes. With all that you have spoken about, now the rates of the dollar against the cedi, and let's look at that one. Some experts have said that there has to be stringent measures that will help our country trade in our local currency to be able to arrest the situation within this particular time, because some countries have done it and it has worked for them, because all our trading and whatever we sell or buy, it is quoted in dollars. And if we should do away with that and go by our local currency, it will help in the short and medium term. Do you think this will work?
So that's a good question. Maybe to a certain extent. Okay. So for example, even if we are priced in cedis, you and I know that people will still have. So that problem may still be there. For example, if you go to the ports, I still don't understand why the duties, they look at the dollar price, change it before they ask you to pay duties. Okay, and consequently, if the cedi is depreciating or the dollar is appreciating, the importers, if you speak to Buta, the duties they pay keep increasing. Okay, so yes, it may work back to a end. Apart from what I've mentioned, that's what we call economic exposure. Okay, let me explain. So even for businesses that are purely domestic, they will still be affected by what is going on in the international markets. Okay, so we know that if you're an importer and you have imports to bring into the country and the dollar is appreciating, it affects you negatively. if you're an exporter and you have exports and the dollar is depreciating, your inflows will reduce. So we call that transaction exposure. And this affects people who are involved in international trade. But even for purely domestic firms, they are exposed to what we call economic exposure. Okay, they may have nothing to do with the dollar, but whether the dollar appreciates or depreciates has a direct effect on them. And like we are seeing currently, there are domestic businesses who are not involved in international trade, but the depreciation of the cedi has led to increasing prices, imported inflation, and that has also affected domestic prices. So yes, it may be a starting point, but I don't think it will solve all the problems.
Right, okay. But many are calling for heads to roll. You think that will solve the problem that we are faced with now?
Well, I'm not a politician, but yes, some heads may need to roll. And we have seen that. I'm being careful here. We have seen that in the UK. Okay, so in the UK, we saw that the finance minister, Kwesi Kwarteng, was sacked, and subsequently the prime minister resigned, Liz Truss. Okay, and we have new leadership in the UK. I think that has calmed the markets a bit. Okay, and given what is happening domestically, I think that yes, some heads need to roll. Maybe new faces may bring confidence to Ghanaians and also to investors internationally.
Right, I will leave the conversation here. When other matters come up, certainly I will come back to you. But let me come in studio and find out from my guest. I have been joined by Ibrahim Al-Hassan, who is also with the EIB network. Ibrahim is also a parliamentary correspondent. I would want to start with you because you have been in parliament recently and there has been calls for the finance minister to take a bow. How has things panned out with the current situation that we are faced with?
Well, so it's been back and forth. It's been scenes of unprecedentedness, so to speak, where we had majority MPs. In fact, the initial report we had was that they were numbering just 80. In my subsequent engagement with Asante Atim North MP, and the Kwame Appiah-Kubi, he tells me that no, he meant more than 80% of the majority members of parliament were demanding the heads of not just the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, but the minister of state at the finance ministry, Charles Edubuahin. But of course, we all know how that panned out. There was a subsequent meeting with the president. The president expressed discomfort, I'm quoting, about the timing, given the fact that the finance minister is at the war front, so to speak, in parentheses, in an engagement with the IMF to clinch a deal. And this deal the nation needs by the end of the year. Otherwise, the quagmire, the economic quagmire we find ourselves in could be much more deeper than we are witnessing now. Again, the 2023 budget has been prepared. And of course, even though we have director of budget at the finance ministry, we have technocrats there, the president believes that he needs his arrowhead, who is the purse holder, the national purse holder, Ken Ofori-Atta, to lead that charge for the presentation of the 2023 budget. Afterwards, he could then consider the demands that have been put before him by his own MPs. So there was a press statement signed by Majority Leader Osei Mensah-Bonsu announcing what I've just relayed to us, that they are at least holding on with the demand. But that's not the only move that took place in Parliament. We are aware that the minority had equally filed a motion for vote of censure against the finance minister. Simply put, attempting to impeach the finance minister. And they had 7 reasons that they wanted to do that. They talked about breaches of the 1992 Constitution. They talked about the fact that the minister had engaged himself in conflict of interest. And when this nation is going through economic turbulence, as a result of debt overhang, those loans that were taken were benefiting the finance minister. And here again, I'm relating to exactly what the allegations on the motion or the other paper are. Then the speaker admitted that motion. So as we speak, that motion is alive. It's on the order paper per the 1992 Constitution, when any motion of censure is brought against a minister or a deputy minister, it needs to be advertised for 7 days, 7 sitting days. So, as of yesterday, that motion had been advertised for 2 days, 2 sitting days. Next week, the clock will tick as well. After 7 days, the minority will have to move the motion, and then the debate will ensue thereafter. Ken Ofori-Atta, the finance minister, will be given the opportunity to respond to all the 7 claims that have been made against him by the minority, after which the House will decide on his fate. And usually it's voting by secret ballot. Again, yesterday there was an attempt, in fact, 2 days ago, to shoot down this motion. And that came from Deputy Majority Leader Alexander Kwame Afenyo-Markin, who argued that when you bring a motion of censure against a minister or a deputy minister, you just advertise the motion on the order paper. You don't reproduce the allegations on the order paper, because the person you are leveling these allegations against is not there to represent, to defend himself. So why reproduce those allegations without backing those claims with any evidence? So that was his argument, and that the motion was not properly before the House. So he was moving an application for these matters to be dealt with. Hamid Rizu, on his part, in his response, said that no, they have evidence, but they can only produce the evidence when the motion is moved, and that will be the day that the motion will be moved and the debate will ensue afterwards. So he can't put the cart before the horse. Every single allegation that has been reproduced on the order paper, they have evidence to back those claims. Ken Ofori-Atta, the finance minister, will be given the opportunity to respond when that time comes. After a back and forth, Speaker came to rule that the motion that he admitted was well and proper, so it must stand. Now, Rebecca, we cannot decouple what's happening in Parliament to what's happening to the nation economically. As Prof said, when you talk about the economy, it's about perception, it's about reaction. If you remember, the CD was performing woefully against the dollar about 3-4 days ago. I'm aware that government has taken custody of some dollars, so that has at least eased the tension in the system and addressed the issue of scarcity of the dollar. Again, the central bank has taken some measures, including closure of some 2 forex bureaus for not adhering to the dictates of their business. That if you are selling dollar to anybody, first of all, find out the purpose. Record the details of the person you are giving the dollars to. And that's, of course, and then, of course, we all know what is happening to the black market, where there has been a general clampdown on that. The CD has stabilized for the past 3 days. These are all reactions to the efforts government is putting in and happenings in Parliament as well. In my engagement with some majority members who have decided to now put their demand on hold until the IMF negotiation is done and then the 2023 budget is equally presented. Some of them don't outrightly tell you that they won't support the motion for censure, as in they won't vote in favor of removal of Ken Ofori-Atta. But they tell you that let's wait and see. Others will tell you that no, the purpose might be the same, to see the back of Ken Ofori-Atta, but the vehicles cannot be the same. The NDC vehicle cannot be the same as their vehicle. They wrote to the president. They didn't get any positive feedback. They wrote to the party hierarchy. No positive feedback. Reason why they had to come public to demand that these 2 persons leave office. The president has assured them that that will be done after these 2 events have passed. They are very confident that the president will honor his pledge and ensure that happens. If you ask the question about if that doesn't happen, what happens? They tell you when they get to the bridge. They will cross it.
But I'll come back to you to find out whether his removal or otherwise will even help our economic situation and the woes that we find ourselves in, particularly with its attendant effects on Ghanaians and the general public. But let me come from the human rights point of view, because you are a developmental journalist, and let's look at how people are affected by the happenings now, especially with transport. Once transport fares go up, almost everything in our country also will have a feel of it. What are you picking up?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to use this opportunity to also say a big thank you to all our viewers in fact, the hardship is just too much. The dire economic situation that we find ourselves in now means something ought to be done. It looks like there is hope upon hopeless outside there. When you talk to people, people have been calling on us, asking us what is going on. Haven't we taken any step to also intervene, let our voices be heard? For instance, just today, as I was coming, GPRTU has already adjusted the tariffs in terms of transportation cost. And guess what? According to them, it's 19%. But what the drivers are charging over there is way beyond 19. So I decided to pick up my phone and I dialed Abbas, the communication officer at GPRTU. And what he told me was that, my brother, it is not my fault. So I asked, have you really adjusted the rates, the tariffs? He told me yes. And he even mentioned the percentage. And I told him that, look, but what the people are charging here is way above. And he said it's not his fault, that they have decided to make it 20 because nobody cares. When they met with the government, unfortunately, they planned that it should go beyond 20, the threshold of 20%. But in the end, they settled on 19. And guess what? He also added that none of us made an effort to inquire or to intervene. He blamed journalists for not also speaking about the issue. Everybody is unconcerned about the happenings. So the drivers have decided to do whatever they also want to do. The question is it right? It is not right. But from what I get, the sense I get from his utterance means government does not care whatever happens. Despite the excruciating hardship that we all find ourselves, it doesn't show that they are committed to doing something to alleviate the pain of the ordinary people, the vulnerable, the poor people out there who are suffering. And it tells you that day in, day out, we have no choice than to battle with the hardship, to live with it for the rest of our lives, which is so sad. Looking at the SDGs, the gap of inequality, the poverty and other margins that we have right now, are we on track to ensure that we attain the SDGs? I don't think so. Ghana is in that direction. Looking at what is on the ground already, look at where we have been. So for me, we need to stand up on our feet. Something drastic measures.
What more can journalists do to as you said, Abbas had to tell you that journalists are not speaking to the situation. Here we are also talking about it. What more can we do so that we can become that voice within our space as a fourth estate of the realm, to be able to also help in a way, because the ordinary man cannot speak for himself?
Most definitely. And Becky, this crisis we find ourselves in has brought out once again the greed in the Ghanaian. Let's call a spade a spade. We are all one way or the other taking advantage of each other. Because of how challenging the economic situation is, everybody wants to make money, legitimately or illegitimately, because that's the only thing that can get you to go by. That can, of course, sustain you. Now, market women, traders, are taking advantage. Not all of them, some of them. GPRTU brought out a statement announcing 19% increase in transport fares, and then announced as well that it was going to take effect, Rebekah, today. Even before that statement had come out, drivers were charging new fares.
That's right.
Yes.
Drivers were charging new fares. But then, when you inquire, they tell you that even before the statement could come, prices of fuel product had equally gone up. So they have two options: park their vehicles, wait for today, then they go buy the fuel at the new rate, and then they can also be able to charge the new fares. Or risk it, put their vehicles on the road to commute you and I, and then revise the fares upwards. So that was the challenge they were facing. So if you realize, for the past 3 days, we had queues at odd hours. Times that usually you go to stations that you wouldn't see queues. Queues were there because some drivers actually opted to park their vehicles. Again, even the 19% rate that was announced, I heard the information minister talk about the fact that it had not been concretized and that negotiations were still ongoing. Nonetheless, we are here and they are not even adhering to the 19%. They are charging more.
That is sad.
That's sad. And I blame the Transport Coordinating Council. That's supposed to be more or less like the liaison institution between government and then the transport unions. What is that council doing? The Transport Ministry, what is the minister doing? Because, see, we talk about price control. Here we cannot return to those days. We all know what happened during the Kalabule era, hoarding, grandparents were dragged from the shop by their hair, flogged, whipped by military men in a doom, and what have you. Those are not the days we want to return to.
That's right.
But if we have a control over anything, it should be about transport fares. Because there's a council. And then the transport unions are equally there. We all meet. And then we decide on the rate that is better for not just government, not just you and I, but also for the transport operators as well. For the past 2 years or so, the back and forth has not been helpful to the ordinary Ghanaian, the ordinary commuter. And I think that's where I would say the Transport Ministry, the council, they have failed us. They have failed us. See, somebody told me a story of coming from Kasua yesterday, and right at the West Hills Mall, commuters, the driver had parked, and it was free for all fight. The passengers were fighting the conductor and the driver. They had parked the vehicle and they were engaged in fisticuffs over the fares.
Interesting.
Because the passengers, the argument was that the increment was supposed to take effect this morning, today. The conductor says no. The driver says no. He says, okay, then get down. If we are to get down, then give us our money. And that was enough reason to engage in fisticuffs. And given the tension in the system, everybody is on the edge. That's right. A little spark, and you do the unthinkable.
Yes, we are in a lawlessness state as we speak now, because one of the commuters said this morning that we are is because we are in a Kalabule era. Look at the word, the term that he used. So anybody can choose to do anything. The only thing that they are mentioning is God. Whatever you do, God will judge you. But is that the way to go?
What if
the God factor important around this time? I'll come back to you. But let me announce the number to get interactive with us is 0244 745152. It will be displayed on your screen. It's even on your screen as I speak. You can get it, send in your WhatsApp or your text message, and let's get the feel on the ground around this time. How are you dealing with the new price hikes, and what has been your experience as you even bought public transport around this time? I still have Professor Rebekah Awuah, who is an associate professor with the University of Ghana Business School. He's at the finance department. I still have him on Zoom. Prof, you have been hearing the conversations in here. What will be your reaction? Because now the leadership of the GPRT is telling us that it's out of their hands to even control their own drivers who have agreed to a term of the hike that they need to go by. And people have gone past the percentage and taken their own amount as transport fares.
Yes. Yeah, so Rebecca, these are interesting times, and like your in-studio panelists have said, a lot of people are taking advantage of the situation, and we need some form of regulation or intervention. And I know that in Ghana we have a Consumer Protection Agency. Okay, they should be working with GPRTU, standards boards, etc., to ensure that people do not take advantage of consumers. You go to the market and say people are charging different prices for sometimes the same goods and services. Okay, so it's important that the consumer protection agencies do what they're supposed to do. We don't have currently a competition authority in Ghana. Okay, if we had a competition authority, then it could ensure that we don't have practices like price collusion, where traders come together to collude and increase prices to the disadvantage of consumers. So those are the things that I think I'll make to what has been said in the studio.
But what practical steps can Ghanaians take around this time to be able to live even by the day?
It's really difficult. I'm sure that a lot of people are going through economic stress. Okay, transport prices keep increasing, and that means that your disposable income, what you can actually spend, a lot of people most of their salary goes into transportation. You are not talking about food, healthcare expenses, etc. So it's a really, really difficult situation. And indeed, it's difficult to control in the sense that people begin to behave irrationally. Okay, like one of your panelists in the studio said, people can even get into physical fights. Okay, so I think that and I know that it's very difficult to do because if you sit on the sidelines, you may lose out. But we need to calm down and avoid the panic. Okay, if you don't need dollars, don't rush and go and buy dollars. That contributes to the problem. If you don't rush to do so because that would cause inflation, what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we do need to calm down as citizens. The government also has to repose confidence in us as to what they are doing, that they are on top of the situation, that they are introducing policies that are going to work, and that will also calm people down.
Right, but you know, in your earlier submission, you talked about communication. Soon,
Yes.
The president will be addressing the nation, and you have talked that you have said that in this time communication is key. But what are your expectations from that address to the nation?
Okay, so probably this communication should have come earlier. There's been a gap in terms of communicating to the public, and that has contributed to what we are seeing now. But in terms of my expectations, I would like to see the president address the measures that they are putting in place to slow down the depreciation of the cedi, the measures that they are putting in place to restore confidence in the economy, the measures that they are putting in place to make people just comfortable. Other than that, like we've seen, people are going to panic more and we are going to see irrational behaviors taking place. So yes, you should address what they are doing to stabilize the cedi. What are the short-term measures they are putting in place, apart from the IMF bailout? Like we have heard recently, the negotiations with the IMF probably are not going very well. If we don't land an IMF deal, what are the alternatives to ensure that the economy doesn't collapse? Okay, so that's one that I want to hear. What are the alternatives to the IMF deal if we don't get a deal? What are their short-term measures to increase reserves in the economy, apart from the cocoa syndicated loan and apart from the Afri-Exim Bank loan? What are the measures to increase the levels of reserves in the economy? So those are some of the things I'm looking out from his address.
Right. Let me go over to the phone and take a few comments from our viewers. I have this from Rashid. Prof, we'll come back to you. We are in this together, so please be there for us. This one says, Rebekah, imagine all your life working without salary because you run a non-governmental organization, an NGO, and the government cost of living has tripled beyond the roofing. How do you survive? This is a question I'm posing to all of you. Rashid, as I earlier said, we are in this together, and we are also, as journalists, doing our best and putting the issues before the powers that be to be able to react. But government communication, your expectations. Number two, whether taking off the finance minister will even bring anything different to the whole issue that we find ourselves in.
Well, Becky, they say that if it moves like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's indeed a duck. Financial economists can all not be wrong. Analysts can all not be wrong. The market watchers can all not be wrong. Even the MPP MPs in Parliament can all not be wrong, as well as the NDC MPs. See, I initially told you that the market, the financial market, is reactionary. It's very sensitive. And if you remember, I remember former finance minister two of them actually, both Kwabena Dufo and Setekbe, and then I think even Kojuban Redu, saying money doesn't like noise. And it's true, money doesn't like noise. When they say that, what they mean is that what you say about the economy, if you keep repeating it, it is perceived to be the reality, and then the impact could be felt. If these people who have mentioned, these institutions, are all saying that the finance minister must go, you can be rest assured that if he goes, the market will react positively. And they give their reasons. They talk about the fact that the finance minister has said from the word go that we're not returning to the IMF. He doesn't believe in we going to the IMF for any assistance because we are a sovereign nation. We are a nation of pride. A few months down the line, the economic realities hit us. And there are some analysts who argue that if we had gone to the IMF earlier, Becky, well, I've been here talking about the successes, not the tangible hardship, as I term it, that Ghanaians are going through. Because the hardship that Ghanaians are going through can be held physically. It's tangible. It's not perception. It's not a feeling anymore. It's something that hits you directly, solid. Now, Prof mentioned that we are having a challenge clinching an IMF deal. And there are many watchers of the economy who have said same. Who is leading our negotiations? Is the finance minister. Could that be a reason why we are still not able to clinch a deal yet, or there is no clear way of clinching a deal yet? Again, if you look at the demands on the table, every economic analyst that you engage will tell you that there's a need for debt restructuring because we are here because of our debt overhang. Every year we're borrowing not less than $3 billion. And that gave us some semblance of stability and economic buoyancy. Now we've hit rock bottom. The financial market is no longer available to us. It's no longer open to us because we are not creditworthy. If that's our challenge, then IMF will insist that we restructure our debt. Simply put, those that people, institutions that we owe, we have to go to them and tell them that this rate of interest, we cannot pay, we can pay this much. Or your monies might be due next year. We might want to push it to next 2 years. Your monies might be due next 6 months. How about we pay it next year? That's debt restructuring. And then, of course, you can talk about haircut as well, where you negotiate to scale down the amount of money you have to pay, be it principal or interest. Now, what we are pushing is debt forgiveness, Rebecca. What we are pushing is debt forgiveness. That, just as we got a pick, our creditors should decide to write off our debt. We are a middle-income country. We are no longer at a place that afforded us opportunity to get a pick. So there will be a pushback. So if I want you to pay your debt and you are telling me that I should forgive you your debt and we are negotiating, that will drag the negotiations. That will drag the negotiations, and that's where we are as a nation. So yes, like I said, all the analysts cannot be wrong that if the finance minister should call it a quit now, the market will react positively. The appointing authority is the president, and he has given us reasons why the finance minister cannot go at this material point in time. We can only hope and pray that it works. Now back to come to his address, my expectation. I want the president to take ownership of the problems we are in now. And that's a good start. That you elected me as your leader, number one gentleman of the land. We are in this problem together. I take responsibility. No blame game, no name calling. Yes, you can talk about Russia, Ukraine, you can talk about the impact of COVID. Nobody is oblivious of that fact. But you see, you can suffer from one ailment or the other. How it affects you is dependent on your immune system. We didn't have an immune system. So when these external factors came, we couldn't withstand the shocks. And that's why we're on a stretcher now. So, of course, the former president equally addressed the nation a few days ago. If I have my way, I'll tell the president not to even talk about the former president's address. Because there were some solutions that we preferred and what have you, forward-thinking. And like I said yesterday elsewhere, that if for nothing at all, the former president has said that the military must protect our constitution, just as the president called on them to do. That's forward march. So let's not look backwards. even though there's political capital to be made out of this, at least for the president, he will not be on the ballot paper come 2024. So his interest must be more about his legacy and how he lives. So here we are. I also expect him to announce some measures, drastic measures. And you see, Becky, that's what we've lacked in our leaders over the years. We don't have radical leadership. Nigeria showed some radicalism in leadership by banning importation of rice. Guess what? The Naira has been saved, and they are now food sufficient when it comes to rice production. Given the times we are in, there are certain imports that we need to cut, we need to eliminate. I expect to hear that from the president. I expect to hear that from the president today, and that will be the salvation of our city. Otherwise, in fact, we spent more than $400 million to import vegetables, including tomato. So we are a dollar exporting nation. We are a dollar exporting nation. Meanwhile, we trade in cities. How do you expect our city, our currency, to survive? It will continuously be battered because of this. So these are the radical measures that I want to hear from the president, because that's how leaders are made.
Right. My time is is up, and I wish this conversation can go on and on. But let me take this from Onoma Akwa in Joko Akrobo. He says, please, our leaders should be up and doing, for we are suffering too much. The GPRTU too should be strict on their drivers to use the 19% increment in lorry fares than their own fares. Go to Cape Coast, to Trifopra, so Joko to Joko Akrobo, they are charging what they like. And the leaders must be up and doing. Okay, Onoma, we are grateful for that one. In a split second, give me your parting comments. People have said that now God is the ultimate economist. The country would have to return to God. Is the God factor crucial at this moment, or we should let it go and just continue with our
we are
economics?
praying for miracles. You heard the finance minister said a while ago that the only way to make it is prayer. Miracles should happen, but that's not the way it should go. We should be proactive. Recently, when John Dramani, former President John Dramani, was making his speech on the topic Ghana, building the Ghana that we want, he mentioned that one thing: government should always listen. This is not a time. This is a time to unite. This is not a time to politicize, And he is also touched, or he talked to the citizens that we should all come together. We should learn to consume local foods, buy local made foods, stuffs or goods. So I also want to reiterate my voice in that direction. And also I would like to use this opportunity to call on the government. You see, population. Yes. So what do? Sexual and reproductive health rights must be enforced. Family planning methods must be adopted. We need to sensitize the public. The Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare should take up that role. We, the CSOs, will back them. And there should be an allocation in the budget that will take care of the family planning products. People need condoms, contraceptives, and other things. We cannot keep multiplying when we don't have food in the system. You see the point? We don't have jobs. So these are things that we should prioritize. And our outreach will also support calls to ensure that this thing happens. But government should involve us. They shouldn't just be standing aloof. They should listen. No, they should listen. It's like whatever you tell them, they don't hear. With all the calls that they are making, that's the problem. I spoke recently to an MPP man who is a good friend of mine, and he told me that the only problem about the president is he doesn't listen. He has refused to listen. That's why we are here today. So it is time that he come to the table with everyone who has an idea, experts and all that, financial and economic experts, academia. They have a lot of advice, but he doesn't heed all those advice. So this is the time for me. That is the call I'm making to His Excellency President Akufo Addo, that he should listen. He should be a listening government. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know whether I still have Prof. Do I still have Prof on the line? Yes, Prof. Please, you have been listening to the conversation, and my time is almost up. So let me take your parting comments. The way to go, whether to resort to God or still go by our accounting books.
So, I have to be careful how I answer this question, but this is a problem that human beings have to solve. Okay, what I would say is that we can pray for wisdom and guidance as to how to approach it, but ultimately it's a human problem that has to be solved by human beings. My parting comments in terms of recommendations will be that I think it's been mentioned, but we need to change the structure. These are medium to long-term solutions. Okay, we need to change the structure of the economy, focus more on exportation and not just exporting even raw materials. Okay, your panelist instantly mentioned the Nigerian experience with growing rice. Again, the BOG financing of government debt, okay, should be restricted to not more than 5% of the previous year's revenue, according to the Bank of Ghana's own acts. Okay, that's very, very important because that contributes to monetizing the government debt and may put a lot of money into the economy, causing inflation. Then we need to prioritize social interventions. People have mentioned free SHS several times. Okay, some people can pay. Why don't you allow them to pay? We also need to look at increasing domestic revenue, okay, in terms of, for example, property tax, etc., and collecting it in a more efficient way, for example, using digitalization. Finally, we need to address corruption. It's one of our biggest problems, and it's one of the things that has led us to where we are today. Okay, so there are agencies that have been mandated to fight corruption. We have the special prosecutor, for example. Okay, we need to resource them to make sure that they do their job well, and they have the resources to do what they've been mandated to do by law. And that there should be punitive actions. Okay, if people steal money from the state and they walk away free, then somebody else will have incentives to also get involved in corruption. So this will be my parting comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. We are glad that you were able to join us via new media, and Professor Elikplimi Agloyo is a finance and economic expert. He is with the Department of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School, and we are so much grateful for your time at this hour. And in studio, I have been in here with Ibrahim Al-Hassan, who is a broadcast journalist with the EIB network, and he is in Parliament. He's been giving us all the happenings in Parliament today. And Joseph Kobla-Womeko is a development journalist. He's a freelancer as well, and you know his passion when he comes to human rights. And this particular issue, it borders on human rights as well. So you saw the passion with which he came out with his submissions. Thank you, my friends. And here you have been sending in your messages. Forgive me that I was not able to read all, but let me take this from Ales. Ales says, please, the law in Ghana is not working. The transportation fares has been increased by 19%, and drivers has increased it to 30%, and the lawmakers are saying nothing about it. What do we do as ordinary people? I don't even know what the journalists can do, because sometimes they are in the public transport with us, and even when they say it is going nowhere, they tell you that you also sell your goods, let them also take their own charge. Unless it's sad, eh? But we are hoping and praying that something drastic will happen in the short term, so that it will help all of us, because we are also living in this country. My name is Nihad in Debugri. Please, the Consumer Protection Agency should do something, because we hear them when things are not going well with PURC, with tariffs, every tariff. How about this transport fare in the current situation? Consumer Protection Agency, if you are there, let's hear you, because market women are really killing us. That's how he puts it. And I'm sending you this from Winneba, Nihad in Debugri. Sister Becky, that's how you choose to call me. I would love to contribute to the program. Please, you are free to do so. This one says, the topic you are discussing is very important. We don't know what to do now. We don't simply know what to do. And unfortunately, you didn't add your name. The messages keep coming and coming, and please forgive me. I know other programs of ours and other networks as well would also discuss these pressing issues, and we would need you to join in the conversation, so that we can have one Ghana, and we can have our economy standing to the test around this time with all the shocks that are coming in externally and internally. My name is Rebekah Awuah, and we have been doing this with you and with Joseph Class Peters in the seat and the entire crew. We say thank you so much. God willing, we'll see you again same time next week.